Hi, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, today I want to try to explain away a few ideas that are blindly said in the Jewish world as excuses on why we should not encourage non-Jews from becoming full Jews. And honestly, I wonder why these concepts have not been challenged till today, when they are so deeply ethically and hashkafically flawed. And friends, the concepts I'm speaking about revolve around the idea of lifnei iver, of placing a stumbling block before someone. Because one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, modern rabbis give for not offering Torah to non-Jews or encouraging non-Jews to consider Judaism is the notion of lifnei iver, the idea that offering them Torah would be equivalent to harming that person. How? Because, as they teach, that because non-Jews or Gentiles do not have to keep Torah, by offering them Torah, you would actually be making their lives more difficult because, as they teach, that non-Jews only have to keep 7 laws. But after they convert, they'll be bound to 613. And the reason they teach that it is okay to proselytize and encourage those born of Jewish mothers to embrace Torah is because there are already Jews who are already obligated in the 613 mitzvot. So in some way, we're actually doing them a favor. So this is the premise that virtually every Jew believes on why we do not proselytize Gentiles. And friends, today I will show you how this premise is not only wrong, but I'm also going to explain where it derives from. So the basis of this form of thinking derives off the notions of reward and punishment. The idea is that an individual should only make their lives less strenuous by doing what they're currently expected to do than to aspire to a more difficult obligatory existence. So in other words, all effort in our religious lives, or in that sense in our ethical lives, should not surpass the present reality we happen to be born into, according to their opinion. And if someone would come along and offer or convince the individual possibly living a life on a higher ethical level, on a higher moral level, that would be seen as lifnei iver. Again, because they're making that person's life harder when it doesn't have to be. And again, friends, this is the basis on why the average rabbi will tell you that he does not encourage non-Jews to consider Judaism. And also feels he has an obligation to encourage born Jews to consider it. Well, I will start off by saying that it's a little depressing to know that in the religious Jewish world, we classify choosing a higher ethical, moral, religious consciousness as a stumbling block for any competent human being, unless we do not consider non-Jews fully human or capable of understanding the difference or the connection between law and social morality. But anyways, we'll get to this. And regarding those born of Jewish mothers, the first thing we should ask is, how do we know that if they are fully irreligious and have no idea of Torah and mitzvot, that they're actually held liable for either keeping or not keeping what they're not aware of? And the answer is that we do know that halachically and hashkafically they're not liable. And this, friends, is common knowledge in Judaism. So by targeting these individuals and thus educating them on Torah and a Torah lifestyle, these rabbis' modern reasoning should teach them that this would also be like placing a stumbling block before them. How? Because before they were targeted, they did not know and were thus free from punishment. And now they do know and are not. And again, this is Judaism 101, friends. Every rabbi knows this. In other words, this is how Judaism functions. But the truth is, friends, is that this idea of only encouraging Torah to born Jews actually rose out of Kabbalistic Judaism for many reasons. For one, it is Kabbalah that teaches that intentions ultimately do not affect spiritual judgment. In other words, if you ask your average Kabbalistic rabbi on why someone suddenly got sick in your house, the first thing he will tell you is to check your mezuzot, because by them unintentionally becoming pasul, it can actually bring judgment in your life. Or how some Jews walk up to everyone in the street asking them if they're Jewish, religious or not, to put on tefillin, when, to an irreligious Jew, it means nothing. But as Kabbalah teaches, pedigree trumps intentions, and thus the unintentional can bring down heavenly judgment, whether good or bad. And that's just among the Kabbalistic. In other words, others comfortably in the mystical bandwagon will just repeat this mystical non-halachic jargon to soothe their ethnocentric urges of wanting to keep anyone that looks or acts different outside of the tribe, which ultimately just elevates the authenticity of our Torah to a higher level, and how it chose to mention the mitzvah of loving the stranger countless times. Why? Because it knew how difficult this was among Israel. Not to mention that it is one of the 3 cardinal sins of the Torah. In other words, one of the 3 that Hashem himself said that he would destroy the Jewish people over, and the other 2 are the oppression of the widow and the orphan. But regardless, I want to explain further how this is ultimately a perversion of the idea of lifnei iver. How? Because the idea of lifnei iver does not apply in terms of ethics. In other words, in regarding ethics, Torah mitzvot have always been understood as opportunities, not burdens. Because, friends, there's a huge difference. But then they will say that it's an opportunity for the born Jew, whether religious or not, and a burden for the non-Jew, whether interested or not. And friends, honestly, sometimes it feels that this will literally take years to wean Israel off of such baseless, bigoted ideologies. Why? Because it is Kabbalah that teaches that non-Jews are 100% completely irredeemable and harbor a soul on par with that of an animal, while a Jew is intrinsically, apart from how he believes or how he behaves, literally part of God and harbors a soul which is composed of the essence of God. So, just like you would not think of attempting to convince your dog of keeping 613 mitzvot, mainly because he is not ethically conscious enough to embrace them, so they do not share Torah with non-Jews, and rather just offer them a set of negative laws, with the exception of dinim, that are just there to keep them subjugated, unlike positive commands which actually exist to help one aspire to greater heights. So, how would it ultimately hurt anyone to bring them to Torah? In other words, what makes the Torah authentic and divine is that the very fact that it does not only have the ability to affect and impact the lives and ethics of some men, but of all men, my friends. And this is true. And another thing that we should ask ourselves is if the Kabbalistic idea of withholding goodness is even hinted to in Torah. And if it's not, why do we still practice it? In other words, in that sense, wouldn't we also accuse the Almighty of lifnei iver? Why? Because, as you know, that by him offering the Torah to the Israelites, when they at least at that time did not know anything about the mitzvot, and thus were not liable to keep them, of course, apart from the basic sense of morality that we're all endowed with, which many explain as the 7 laws, how would the Almighty not be considered cruel by offering, and thus the Israelites stupid by accepting Torah by Kabbalistic standards? Or better yet, should Israel not have accepted the mitzvot, just as we encourage non-Jews to do nowadays, when they could have just had an easier existence by living by 7 laws? Think about it. If we would teleport a rabbi of today to the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, would he start yelling at the Israelites and tell them, wait, stop, just keep 7 laws, don't accept the Torah on the basis that it will just make their lives easier? But the truth is, friends, is that they wouldn't do that. Why? Because of the Kabbalistic belief that every Israelite is intrinsically superior, no matter what they believe, to a non-Jew. And that's why they deserve the Torah, which is not a Torah idea, might I add. But anyways, friends, another reason given by modern-day rabbis to back up the notion that we must discourage non-Jews from coming to Torah is because what if after they convert, they fail to keep the commandments? They teach that this in some spiritual way would hurt the Jewish people. And don't we already have enough irreligious Jews among us? And friends, this example really just feeds on the previous one, mainly because it builds on the notion that irreligious born Jews are in some way held liable or more accountable for not keeping mitzvot that they don't know about, while a non-Jew would not be. And when I say accountable, I really mean accountable by God, not to mention that a court wouldn't find them guilty anyways. Not that we have a court now. And friends, don't think that I'm in any way saying that God does not hold people accountable for doing wrong, even though they do not know what they are doing is wrong. But rather, that when he does, he doesn't distinguish between who has a Jewish mother and who doesn't have a Jewish mother. As a matter of fact, anyone who studies the mitzvot knows that within every mitzvah is bundled in the blessing and the curse. In other words, the practical result of keeping mitzvot bring the practical blessing, and by not keeping them actually harm you. For example, we see that countless times that with our Avot and Chumash, that they stumble across simple situations that later on become Torah prohibitions, whether it's kivud avayim, drunkenness, sexual immorality. My friends, because the keeping of mitzvot actually alters our physical reality. And this is the result of moral relativism in Judaism, friends, that I don't have to tell you was also introduced by Kabbalah. That many think that by learning Torah all day or sending their wives to work or putting tefillin, 2 pair of tefillin on, that they're actually physically making the world a better place. Of course, accompanied by the idea that it is not the actual mitzvot that better the world, but rather some formula like mitzvot plus Jews equals goodness and mitzvot plus non-Jews. It just does not equate. And honestly, friends, if the case was the harming of Jewish people or religion, what do you think the rabbis ceased to encourage irreligious parents from procreating? Because, according to their reasoning, this would also be tarnishing the Jewish people, right? Because their children will most likely be atheists or secular. And the truth is that they do the opposite. They actually encourage marriage and a lot of children, even amongst secular Jews, just as they do amongst religious Jews. And again, because this double standard is really about the tarnishing of their spiritual gene pool and not a concern for non-Jews or how Jews are seen in the world. Because the truth is that once a Jew shares Torah with a non-Jew or an irreligious Jew, he has done his part. And nothing more is expected from him or her. Can you honestly imagine if when leaving Egypt, God tells the Jewish people, do not publicize the miracles that you just witnessed because it might encourage the wrong people to join you and thus tarnish the good thing we have going on here? It's actually the opposite. Everything the Almighty did, he did for all to see. Like it says, that he did it so that they would all know about his plan and about himself. To the point that the Torah itself tells us that by us keeping the commandments, that we would be seen as wise to the rest of the world. Why? Obviously, so that they would be encouraged to join us in our religious pursuit of goodness. And this is why we were chosen to be a light into the nations, as Mishlei states that the Torah is a light and the mitzvot are the candles. And honestly, friends, can you imagine if we embodied that attitude in any other ethical area of our lives, how disastrous it would be? That the reason that we do not encourage others to be good is because after becoming good, that individual might become bad again and give us good people a bad name. I mean, what stupidity and what arrogance for someone to think. But the truth is that people are scared to challenge rabbis on this nowadays. But you know what? Not this rabbi. And please, don't be fooled with the baseless attacks made on my name that I'm not a rabbi and that I'm not even Jewish just because I choose to challenge the status quo. And know that I would even stop teaching Torah permanently if anyone could bring proof for this Motzei Shemra. And also, many erroneously think that any form of disunity present amongst the Jewish people means that we are in some way missing the mark. And friends, please know that unity always has to be on someone's terms. In other words, we could all be moving in a unified manner down a path of destruction. So don't be fooled for cries of Achdut. And regarding Kavod Rav or Kavod Brio, there is never any honor or respect given when Torah is being desecrated, which is actually what's happening today on a daily basis by people pushing sincere people who want to keep Torah away. And quickly, friends, regarding the notion that non-Jews are bound and judged by the 7 laws alone, this is only in regards to a legal court setting, and anything outside of that, as in terms of non-Jews acquiring a place in the world to come, by keeping the 7 laws is only a rabbinic opinion, and rather a rabbinic disagreement because Chazal did not agree on this issue. So, by not offering non-Jews Torah, you could actually be placing in front of them the biggest stumbling block of them all, which is blocking them from acquiring a place in the world to come, which not just Tanakh, but even Chazal were unanimous that the righteous of Israel have. So friends, if you're not Jewish and you're hearing my message today, I want to welcome you to enter under the wings of the Shekhinah by converting to Torah Judaism and becoming an inheritor to all the blessings in our God's Torah. For more information on everything Jewish, please visit bejewish.org. Thank you.